Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. So today's Poets and Quants Perspectives is Your MBA Your Way, and we'll be talking about the flexibility of London Business School's MBA. So I'm Paula, editor at Poets and Quants, and my guests today are Monet Lawes, the Senior Global Recruitment Manager of the MBA and Masters in Finance at LBS. We also have with us two recent graduates, very recent graduates from June this year, and they are Felipe Schiavon, who is with us today, and Manali Amitav, who also graduated this June. So let's get right to it. So one of the biggest decisions applicants face when they start their program isn't simply whether to pursue an MBA, but also what kind of experience they want. So London Business School has built a program around this idea that students should have significant control over that journey. And that goes right from curriculum and global experiences through internships and even graduation. So today, as I said, we've got two recent members of the class of 2026 who took different paths through that MBA, and we'll be hearing about that shortly, along with our recruitment director, who will speak about how this program is intentionally designed to really support that student choice. So, to start off with, for each of our panelists, maybe we can start with Monet and then we'll hear from our grads. Tell us a little bit about your background, um, and your role at the school. And I'll tweak this question for Manali and Felipe.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Paula. Hi, everyone. It's lovely to be here. My name's Monet Lawes. I'm the Senior Global Recruitment Manager, as Paula said, for the MBA and Masters in Finance at LBS. I've been with LBS for 3 years, previously in a role still in recruitment and admissions, but working more on our diversity initiatives and our partnerships within recruitment and admissions, and moved over recently into this role. But I've been within higher education recruitment for nearly or over 6 years now. So been a lot of experience in admissions, a lot of experience in recruitment, and I'm really excited to share some tips and tricks and also insider knowledge about our MBA here at LBS, which we're very proud of.
Right. So Manali, can you tell us a little bit about you, where you are today, and in a sentence, what your MBA, your way means to you?
For sure. Thank you so much, Paula. Hi, everyone. I'm Manali. I am a recent LBS MBA grad. But a little bit about myself. I grew up in New Delhi in India, where I worked. I started off my career actually working in finance, worked for a few years with a fintech startup, moved on working with the government on deep tech consulting and policymaking, and ended up at LBS for my MBA on full scholarship with the Laidlaw Foundation Women's Leadership Fund. And I had the most amazing time. So post my MBA, where I am right now, I'm actually working with an SF-based venture capital firm called 500 Global in the emerging markets investment team. And what your MBA, your way means for me is really having and embracing the flexibility of a global MBA.
Great. Felipe, tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks all for being here. I'm Felipe, just like Manali, recently graduated this past June. I have a law background, so a bit different. And then I was a lawyer for 1.5 years in Brazil, born and raised in Brazil. Then I decided to pivot to consulting. So I worked for a consulting firm in the pharma and agriculture space mainly. And then moved to London, worked there for 2 years, and then I decided to go to LBS. LBS was always my first choice, wanted to stay in London. But surprise, surprise, after LBS, I decided actually to go back to Brazil. So really flexible and, career paths and plans change. And then now I'm going back to consulting in Brazil, working for Bain. And your MBA, so Manali, your MBA your way. If I would summarize, Manali stole my word, that would be flexibility. But yeah, it's so flexible, and and you can construct your way, the MBA and your path, that it was honestly perfect for me.
Great. So I think we'll take it back to Monet for a moment. So many MBA programs describe themselves as flexible, obviously, but LBS has really worked to build that flexibility into the structure of the degree itself. So, can you tell us what was the philosophy behind designing that program where students can really personalize their curriculum, and not just the curriculum, but also the length of that MBA?
Yeah, really good question. So the philosophy really comes from us understanding and having kind of a want to fulfill this idea of what the MBA is actually for, right? So a lot of students will come into the MBA, as Felipe did, with a plan maybe to go, have one plan to go one way, and you end up a completely different way. And I think we realize that because of this growth aspect that happens, personal growth and professional growth that happens within the MBA, there needs to be flex and agileness in order for students to be able to access opportunities at different points, to be able to put themselves in environments where, whether it's traveling as Manali did, internships, where they're actually still getting that real world experience alongside a structured learning environment. And so it's meant to sort of act like the first year, and we'll talk about the structure, but the first year is more structured. And that's because, as an incoming MBA, you're going to need that structure to understand, to guide you where you want to go. But then that second year is sort of giving you the structure of electives where you can pick and choose what you want to do. But then it's acting as sort of that fallback structure that you have to be, and that confidence to go out and sort of do the networking, do the internships, while still having that basis of, I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and I still can come back to school and learn, and not be fully fledged out into the world yet, as you guys have just become. So I think the philosophy behind that is purely to allow the students to grow and change how it fits and feels for them. And we give them the opportunity to do that by offering things like early exit, or offering opportunities to travel, and offering opportunities to build your program around your schedule in your second year. Because we're building future leaders and people that are ready to go out into the world after they graduate. So we want to make that transition as smooth as possible and allow them to have that accessibility to that as much as they can. You said your second question, was it about the exit point? Sorry.
Well, one thing I did want to ask about was, in at Poets and Quants, we've been hearing a lot about the different demands of the MBA today,
Mm.
and that things are changing. So I'm curious whether applicants have changed in their views on flexibility, and is that becoming more important to them from what you've been seeing on your end of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, with the way that the kind of economy is at the moment, with the way that the job market is, there needs to be flex within the program and within the outcomes that students can kind of obtain for after their MBA. And so we're finding more and more that students want more choice and more opportunity, and they want to try more things, because the market is shifting and changing so quickly that they have to be able to adapt their skill sets and their mindsets in order to kind of meet the market where it is as well when they graduate. And so we are seeing, and I'm having conversations with more and more sort of prospects and people out looking to do an MBA, who are, asking, how can I build this more into my life? And we're moving post-COVID world, hybrid programs are more common. People want more flexibility around how they study and where they study and when they study. And so we're very much an on-campus school. We have everything on campus in one location, but what we're providing is that ability to flex that curriculum around what you want to do. And so I think the more as the years go on, we're going to see a higher demand for flexibility, just because of the nature of what the generations have been through and what the market is doing.
Sure. So, Felipe, before you started your MBA, what sorts of questions were you trying to answer about your career? And how did LBS convince you that you didn't need to actually have your future really mapped out in detail before you arrived on campus?
So one of the essays that LBS ask you during the application is like, where do you see yourself after the MBA, right? What do you want to do after the MBA? And in that essay, I remember writing that I wanted to go to the venture capital emerging market space where Manali is. And then because I thought I didn't really want to be in consulting anymore. So after I joined LBS, right after I joined, the private equity and venture capital club, took some finance classes, talked with a lot of people, alumni, current students, and basically I figured that venture capital wasn't for me. And I think the environment at LBS and really the time, when we say about flexibility, I think about time, the time that you have to think about your career, right? Um, in some schools you have classes every day. At LBS, no, classes are in 2 to 3 days in the beginning of at least for the core classes in the first semester. So you actually have time. You have time to talk to people. You have time to participate in clubs. And that's how LBS convinced me, that maybe my first hypothesis and what I wrote to get into LBS wasn't right. It allowed me as well to do, part-time jobs. I went to startups to kind of try that world a bit. And again, that whole space wasn't for me, and LBS actually allowed me to see that. So at least that's the way that I see it.
Yeah,
Can I
so the
just add on
ability.
that?
Yeah, of course.
Quickly, just one thing that is really common misconception with applicants that I just want to point out is, you do need to have an idea of where you want to go, a direction. And Felipe is a great example of this. He had a direction, it made sense, and he tried it, and it wasn't something that he enjoyed, which is really common. And it gives you that chance to flip and change and figure out what you want to do. What you write on your application is not a contract. You're not tied to it. We're not going to stand up next to you at graduation and say, you told us you were going to go into this and now you've changed your mind. It's for us to be able to assess whether, where we're a match, we can provide the opportunities and this resource that you need, and also give you a guide through the program. But it's by no means, a contract that you're tied to. So I just wanted to make sure. And Felipe, you're a great example of that, and how that flexibility can allow you to change your mind.
I think that that the ability to try on the shoe, see if it fits, and then go, "Oh, well, nah, it doesn't really fit." That's quite valuable. Maybe just as valuable as finding the right path.
Absolutely.
But so Manali, a similar question to you. Now that you've graduated and you're able to look back, was there a particular moment during your MBA when your goals shifted, or was there something that gave you confidence to change direction?
Absolutely. I think just alluding to what Felipe talked about and what Monet said earlier, when I was writing my LBS MBA essays, I knew that I wanted to be working at the intersection of finance, tech, and impact. Now that takes on different forms with respect to working in a tech startup or with a venture capital firm or in an operator role. But I knew that this is where I wanted to see myself. And then I did write that I wanted to work in a VC and then end up potentially starting my own fund in the future. But at that time, I felt that was very ambitious, given I didn't have any background in working in a VC. However, here I am during the MBA. I think I kind of maximized the most, given I was there for the entire term, the 21-month. So it just alluding to what we were speaking about earlier, it gave me the flexibility to try on different, as you mentioned, polar shoes and different like experiences. So I actually ended up working I actually got a climate fellowship in my first year, just months after I joined LBS, called the Climate Elevate Fellowship at First Impact Partners, where I was working with a climate tech direct air captures company based out of Kenya on their Series A fundraising. And that kind of opened the world of climate for me. So my goals didn't shift, but I was able to kind of find like an expert, like an area where I wanted to um, focus on and build my career towards. And that was kind of one of the first forays into climate for me, the fellowship. And then I think for the rest of the 2 years, I just kind of doubled down on climate. So I interned with several different climate tech startups, forums, summits. I volunteered for every climate summit that I could find in London. So did a lot of different work. But I think that exposure kind of helped me early on decide that I wanted to work in the climate space, but also work in the intersection of climate impact, tech, and finance. And then that was also one of the big catalysts for eventually when I started interning in my first year with the United Nations at the Climate Secretariat. So I think overall, the journey that I took kind of at LBS allowed me to try on different areas. I never had like the goal of working in a multilateral or like a Kenya-based climate tech startup at that point, but it kind of, I think the flexibility allowed me to pursue some of these opportunities.
Mm. I think you've both already spoken to this, but thinking back, I'm curious, how much of that MBA journey do you think was planned before you arrived versus how much actually evolved because of the people you met, the experiences you had along the way? Manali, it sounds like the latter for you, right?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of what I had planned early on was, I would say, I was able to kind of capitalize on a lot of planning that I did early on. However, I think it changed quite a bit as well. I never knew that I would get a global internship. I traveled quite a bit because of the internship. I was based in Germany, so I traveled to a lot of different countries in Europe for just by virtue of my internship. We were doing different innovation programming in different countries across the world at the United Nations. But just by virtue of the fact that I was at LBS and given the kind of circumstances I was in, I was able to take on a global internship. But more importantly, I felt that I was able to kind of mold my journey in ways that I think was very relevant to my career and eventually the interests that I developed during my time in the MBA.
So you knew or you had some idea you wanted to do those internships, but then you were able to tweak accordingly, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the first few months I got the early foray into climate. I loved my experience with the fellowship, and then eventually everything else kind of was like a snowball effect from that early fellowship and early exposure that I got in the MBA, and I was able to do a lot more just building on that experience. And I think even my current role deals with a lot of emerging market dynamics that I think I borrow a lot of the experience that I got early on in my career in my MBA in my role. So I think it was all worth it, I guess, in hindsight. But when I was doing it, why am I diving into something that is completely different from what I had thought?
Sure. Felipe, would you say that you did a lot of pre-planning ahead of starting the MBA, and then how did the journey map out compared to what you'd envisioned?
I mean, historically, every time that I tried to plan my life 3 years ahead, I failed miserably. So it was basically, it- yeah, I mean, I was absolutely sure that I was going to stay in London. My fiance was coming to London, and I wanted to work in London. And then I was absolutely 100% sure that I wanted to work in finance and venture capital, especially on the social impact side. And in the end, after trying a lot of things, um, on a personal reason, I came back to Brazil, but also in terms of careers, it made sense to come back. And I did end up falling into the quote unquote obvious path of consulting. But it's what I like and it's what I wanted to do really. So that's the thing that, I had time to think about it, to experience different things, and I did end up falling into what I was doing before. But I think then I was super glad that I did the 21 months because it allowed me to try different things at this point in my life.
Mm. I think no one will fault you either for going into consulting out of the MBA. I think you're okay doing that. So let's talk a little bit about designing that MBA experience. Obviously, LBS offers more than 100 electives and international experiences and countless extracurricular opportunities. So, starting with you, Felipe, how did you make intentional choices and resist that temptation to just kind of say yes to everything?
I mean, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Like how to not say yes to everything. To me, I think I heard one advice from an MBA 2024 actually, that she said that when you join the MBA, you're gonna have three pillars to focus on: a social pillar, a career pillar, and academics pillar. If you try to focus on the three pillars at the same time and try to do really well at the same time, you might be able to do it, but you're gonna probably burn out, right? Because there's so much to do all the time, every time. Yeah. So I tried at least to focus on two pillars at any given point in time. Sometimes career was more important and then academics, but then social was more important in a month or so. So that's my first advice, and that's what I tried to do. I did not do that during the first 6 months. I did burn out. It was so much. I was overwhelmed. But again, this is the beauty of the MBA as well, trying and doing as much as you can. On the, being more concrete on your question, since the beginning of the MBA, I knew that I wanted to do my global experience in Kathmandu. I've always loved trekking and hiking and mountaineering. So to me, it was like going to Kathmandu, Nepal, and then doing my global experience there, which we are there for a week, worked with clients there in small projects. And then the week after, I just took with a few friends to go to the Annapurna base camp. I didn't know in the beginning of the MBA that I wanted to do an exchange as well. But when I joined LBS, I saw all the opportunities that I had for exchange. I decided to apply for an exchange in Japan, and I was happily enough selected for the Japan exchange. Stayed in Japan for 3 months, which I don't think I would ever had this opportunity if it weren't for the MBA at LBS. So yeah, a lot of things to do. You do need to know why, know when and how to choose, but we'll all be fine in the end.
Mhm. And so for Monet, we've already talked about the fact that there are so many electives that you could take, lots of opportunities outside of the classroom. How do faculty and academic advising, career coaching work together to help students figure out more of a coherent MBA experience rather than just basically a collection of all these interesting courses? Because there's a risk there, obviously, that
Yeah.
if you don't select things very strategically.
No, absolutely. And so part of that support that we give is with through our careers team, which is our career coaches. So every MBA student gets unlimited career coaching sessions, one-to-one sessions throughout their 2 years on the program, and you'll be assigned a career coach from day dot. So that person is basically there to help guide you, make sure you kind of stay on a well, on a good track. They're there to advise you, support you in things like understanding what you might need to build or skills you might need to gain in order to start looking at a certain career path. They might start supporting you with interview prep, resume, CV building, and things like that need adapting. Already said interview prep, but application support. And they just also kind of sometimes end up a bit like a therapist, I guess, where it's like they're trying to figure out, got all these options, what do I take? So the career coaches, for one, are, I think, a really solid foundation for the students to continue to go back to when they need. And kind of supported by the underpinning the career coaches is our employer engagement team. And so they are split into 4 different sectors, which is consulting, tech, finance, and then diversified sectors. And so those teams' jobs is to go out into the industry, kind of partner with corporate clients and bring all of that information back to LBS and to the curriculum and to the program team, to faculty, so that we're making sure we're supporting students in the right way so that they're ready to go on and be great employees, in the field and in the market. So how we ensure students are guided is one through that careers center kind of pillar right there, and then the program team are a huge support system which offer the sort of well-being support and the daily and weekly guidance that the students need, whether there's any personal problems that arise or whether they just need support in ad hoc skill sessions. They run a lot of extra sessions on the side to help students continue to grow their kind of what we call soft skills, I guess now, to make sure that they're being sort of underpinned by all of the academic and theory work that they're doing alongside their course. So we also support with that. And I think something that's really important at LBS is we offer a lot, but the students have to come and experience that and choose to experience that and take those opportunities themselves. So it's not a place where you're really going to get told this is what you need to go and do it. You're going to have to find that information, figure out who those people are. Obviously we're there to support you as a school, but that's the whole part of the growth of the MBA is we want students to have all of those options and they can decide when they want to access it and how they want to access it. So yeah, that's sort of how we build that into the program and that support and structure. But I think if you speak to any student, there's students that use certain services more than other students because they feel they need to. But if you speak to any student, I think you'll find that when they need the support, it's there in abundance. And even once you become an alum, I mean, now Felipe and Manali will experience the alum life, but we offer 2 coaching courses per year for the rest of your life, basically, at LBS, and you're always welcome to come back and use the alumni career service as much as you want. So we support not only on program, but you're part of LBS's community for the rest of your working life. So that's sort of how we build it in.
Mm. And we'll talk a little bit more about that alumni experience later. Very quickly, though, before we finish up on this, one more question for you on this topic, Manali. So I'm curious whether there were any clubs, courses, global experiences, that kind of thing, outside of your original career interests that actually wound up having an outsized impact on your professional development.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in my first year, I was part of 3 clubs: Women in Business, Social Impact, and Entrepreneurship. All the 3 were areas that I had dabbled in, but I did not have like professional work experience in. And I kind of built that network as well as understanding, especially at a global level, given that my entire career was spent in India before. So I learned quite a bit. And first year was mostly operational. So it was running around, booking rooms, finding like experts to come on the panel. However, for the Women in Business Club, for example, I was able to moderate a main stage panel for our Equal conference in front of 500 people. It was an incredible opportunity for me to grow as a public speaker, really. And then even in entrepreneurship, we dispersed over £12,000 worth grants to different startups in the UK. So that was an incredible experience again. In my second year, however, I decided I wanted to own in and try something different. So I continued with the Women in Business Club because I loved it so much, but I then took up a senior role in the tech club, the LBS Tech Club, leading the deep tech pillar, which was kind of like one of the first pillars of LBS. So really co-creating and from scratch, what are the priorities of that club. So we were able to achieve quite a bit in that regard as well. So that was a great experience again. But I think just zooming out, a lot of the areas that I wanted which were non-traditional to me. But overall, in like my purview of like interests and just understanding, I was able to check off. For example, I did my global experience at Johannesburg, which was, I think, a life-changing experience for me, really living in Johannesburg for a week, consulting with different micro entrepreneurs, and like really speaking to some super inspiring people. Overall, I don't think I would have ever gotten that kind of holistic experience with that. Although I do agree with Felipe, it does burn you out quite a bit, just doing so many clubs and like figuring out. I was also inclined to go to for an exchange in my first year to Colombia. I got accepted. However, I decided that that was not the right path for me, given I had like to continue my work after my internship. So I didn't. So I think the entire journey was also very dynamic, where you were taking on different responsibilities, and also like quite real time changing the path that you were on.
Mm, definitely. One very final question under this topic. So if someone followed each of you around campus for a week, what would surprise them most about how different the two of your experience, or just two LBS MBA experiences, can be? Felipe, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Uh, well, I can talk about my experience. At least I think I tried to leverage as much as I could the clubs. I think Manali mentioned a bit about the careers clubs, but LBS has so many more clubs on the sports side and on the country nationality side. So my week was basically, I was working for example, in the first year in the private equity and venture capital club, uh, this, helping them with the big conference that we hold every year called Multiple X. So that could be my Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, classes, and then probably, going to Regent's Park and playing tennis. And then, Thursday, Friday, Thursday class, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'll probably go with the cycling club to cycle, somewhere in the UK. A lot of sports built into it, and with this nationality and sports clubs, it's very important for your career actually, because it's all about networking, right? So I came across all my friends in these clubs, so it's very important to be engaged, and this probably could be my week.
Mm. Yeah, that sounds like a great week. Playing tennis in Regent's Park. Just, yeah, give me that. Maybe not today. It's
I
very
mean,
hot out.
LBS is
Yeah.
right across the street from Regent's Park, right? So that helps a lot.
It is. Yeah, Manali, could you give us very quickly kind of an idea of what your schedule looked like during the week?
For sure. I think for me, it was slightly different, although I would allude to what Felipe said earlier as well. But mine was, I think, just working on like with the club leadership, just maybe figuring out like on Mondays, like what would be like kind of the strategic priorities of like the club, for example. And then kind of reaching out to potential like speakers or really experts in the field that I wanted to work in. A Tuesday would be I just going for different events in London, for example. So I attended this live podcast event at like a rooftop in London with like an amazing view of the London Eye. What an incredible experience! Made some really cool, like met some really cool people and network there. That was maybe a Tuesday for me after classes, of course. And Wednesdays would be, I don't know, taking like a bunch of other classes. Thursdays again, catching up with some friends. We also had this routine sundowners, which is almost like at a party event, like for networking with different programs of LBS every 2 weeks. So I was in the Sundowners crew. So you essentially get licensed to party on campus for a few hours, and you meet different people from different cohorts, like the EMBAs and PhDs at LBS. So that was maybe like a Thursday. And then Friday was really dialing down, like kind of taking a moment to catch up with like my family overseas or meet some friends in London, maybe go to the park. And then there's so many things to do, even just because we're located in London. Like you can go out for a day trip, for example. We had multiple treks organized by LBS. There was one trek to the Seven Sisters hike that was amazing. So I did quite a few of those. You get to meet people as well. But overall, every week was so different. There were some weeks where I was just traveling because of my work with the UN. So I was traveling to Brazil, for example, and I was traveling to New York. So that was also part of my MBA, where I was also full time in the MBA, but also traveling for work. There were others where I was just in London, catching up with like academics, giving exams. So it was so different. Like it's impossible for me to give like a average like week because every week is so different.
Right. So we've got 2 more sections to get through here, and I'm conscious of the time, but I will say if anyone has any any questions for the Q&A, please drop those into the chat and we will do our best to get through those later. All right, so let's talk about timelines. So LBS offers an MBA of either 15, 18, or 21 months, and we're going to discuss a little bit how to go about figuring out what's right for you. So, Monet, LBS obviously gives a lot of choice in how long you take to complete the MBA. What should applicants consider when they are deciding which option is right for them?
Great question. So the first thing is that applicants don't have to decide at application stage. So you can decide once you're on program if you want to exit early. The one caveat for exiting at 15 or 18 months is that you have to have completed obviously the right amount of credits for the course to be passed and completed. If that is done, then really it's up to you. So the idea is when you're on program, you might be within your first year, and the exit points are really there again to offer that enhanced flexibility, because we understand that throughout your time on the MBA, you're going to meet people, opportunities that might come your way, and there might be your dream opportunity comes up, towards the end of your first year, and they want you to come and work for them as soon as you possibly can, and you want to go and work for them as soon as you possibly can. And if you feel you've gotten everything out of your MBA, and if you feel you've got the result that you want with getting that role, then why should we be holding you back from, going out and doing that, providing you've passed your program? So, if that opportunity was to arise, you can plan the rest of your second year to make sure you complete the electives that need to be completed and the credits that need to be completed in order for you to exit at that point. And so it's really there, as I said, to just allow students the opportunity to take the chance to take those opportunities, to explore and, decide if they're kind of fulfilled with their MBA journey. What I will say is most students do the full 21 months. That is purely because some electives won't be available for early exiters because they happen later in the year. So there will be some electives that students will want to take, and so they'll stay. But also some students will just want to take the full experience. It's 2 years that you'll never get back again in your career, and a break that you won't ever get to do again in this way. So most students want to fulfill that full 21 months. But there are that small group of students who do take those early exits because it works for them and it works for what they've wanted to gain out of their MBA. And so we believe we shouldn't, cause a barrier to a student that wants to take that next step slightly earlier than planned. And again, it's all about that plan. Your plan is changeable and agile, and so the MBA needs to be agile with that.
And I've got a super basic question, which is it cheaper if you do 15 versus 18 or 21 months?
Yeah, the golden question. No, unfortunately, it's not. So it's the same cost. Again, obviously, you go in without having to make that decision. So the cost is the same, regardless of if you exit early or not.
Okay, so do the 21 months, get your money's worth. Um,
I'm not advising on anyone's journey, but the option is there if you want to take it.
Sure. Well, Felipe, I mean, this is a good time to ask you. You did opt to do the full 21 months. How did you decide on that timeline, and then how did that choice then influence your internship and recruiting process?
Well, so because I decided in my first year that by the end of the first year that I wanted to go back to consulting, the consulting recruiting timeline is quite, it's a year in advance before graduating. So I basically had my second year uh, with no recruiting, which was very good. So the third pillar of career, I didn't have to think about it. And then just, focusing on networking, socials, and of course, academics. Um, but for me, it was always going to be 21 months because not only, if you graduate in 15 or 18, you cannot do the summer classes of the second year because obviously you're not going to be there. But also, exchange programs and also the global experiences that are going on in the summer, you can't obviously do them as well. And I wanted to take full advantage of the program. So for me, the 21 months was the obvious choice. But again, flexibility, LBS, it's all about flexibility. That's what we've been saying. I have a lot of friends that graduated in 15 and 18 months. And for them, it just made sense. They wanted, a quicker experience. They want to either go back to their previous job or to go or they received an offer, as Monet said. So, it, and they still had an amazing experience. So it's all about your priorities and what you choose.
Yeah, Manali, I believe you said you chose to do the full 21 months as well, right? And looking back, I'm curious, would you make that same decision again? Is there anything that you maybe learned about that timing that might help other applicants now think about whether to make that choice?
Yeah, I think I've 100% I would still do the 21 months. And I think it's very different for different candidates. But my experience was amazing, I think, throughout. But one piece of advice that I would give could be that it maybe the full 21-month may help people who want to pivot their careers in different areas. So, for example, if you come from a finance background and you want to work in a tech background or in consulting or in any others, it makes sense to do an internship and or do like multiple part-time work with different organizations, build your portfolio, and that helps in pivoting post the MBA. And you just need more time to do that, which the 21-month flexibility allows for. That said, I'm also very conscious that there are a lot of candidates who have financial, constraints, or they're on a visa clock, or they're just different constraints and maybe personal priorities, etc., that they have, which kind of also then you can dynamically change the term of the program that you want. But I think for me, for example, working in different or startups and in term time, so doing different part times, as well as my internship, which I started off as a 2-month full-time internship. I ended up working with the UN, for example, for over 10 months in a part-time capacity. So I think the MBA allowed me the flexibility to also take on and like continue with my internships. I got to travel to New York, for example. I mentioned Brazil earlier. I was able to really, I think, maximize on the impact that I had from that work in my first year. So I think if not for the 21-month program, I would just be working at some other organization that I didn't want to probably at that point in time. So I think just kind of doing different experiences helps you decide what you want to do post the 21-month. But I think to each their own, given the kind of circumstances that they have.
Mm. And to both Manali and Felipe, I'm curious, how much did your classmates influence your MBA experience? So, did you at some point have maybe a conversation, or was there a project or a friendship, maybe while you were on one of those long cycle rides, Felipe, that changed the way that you approached your career or your time at LBS? Felipe, did you want to start us off with that one?
I mean, I think overall, if it weren't for the people at LBS, I think the MBA would have been not nothing, but close to nothing, because it's all about the people, right? And that's all that they are all, my friends and the people that I've met. They made my MBA experience what it is. And yes, I mean, we at some point I was having before deciding to go back to Brazil, I was having thoughts on staying in London, or even maybe applying to the Middle East. And I talked with so many people that were in either one geography or the other, so that helped me, for example, form my opinion. And in the end, I decided to go back home. But if it weren't for LBS and that environment, and I think we didn't talk much here about it, but that diversity, right? This is what sets LBS off. A lot of schools say they are diverse, but LBS is truly diverse, right? It's just like people from every single continent, every single geography, every single background. So that, yeah, so people, ever.
Mhm. Yeah, Manali, did you have any sort of conversations, or did you do anything with friends that really maybe changed how you thought about things, or your trajectory?
Yeah, I think through and through, like the people, as Felipe mentioned, have been like a core asset. Like I think if not for the people, there wouldn't be any value. And I would say that's where LBS truly excels because of the diversity factor that Felipe spoke about. Some of my closest friends are from very different parts of the world that I haven't even been to, for example. But I got to learn so much from their cultures when we went out. So we had this Ethiopian dinner for our stream. So we all went out, had amazing food that I'd never tasted in my life before. We had a Peruvian dinner, which was amazing. So that was a different experience with all my classmates. So just kind of those experiences and those like conversations over meals, over classes, gym, like just overall were very helpful. And then I would say the treks matter the most as well. So LBS has multitude of treks that you can be a part of, some professional, some personal. So for example, the Social Impact Club organizes the sustainability trek to Stockholm every year, which can change depending on the years. The Tech Club, for example, organizes one to SF. There's different treks in, for example, East Africa, to India, and so on. So I went, for example, to the Peru trek, and I kind of went to Machu Picchu for the first time. I ticked it off my bucket list. Um, Spoke to a lot of, so I think there's one thing that you can book like the travel by yourself and go with your own company. There's others when there's actual Peruvians in your class and who become your like very close friends who take you from their perspective, from their lens to their home country, to their place where they've been born and brought up. So that's very different, and that kind of teaches you a lot. And for me, it was very familiar, but also very different from where I come from. So it was a very interesting experience, and I think overall that kind of echoed in the entire MBA for me. Just kind of learning from different people, whether it was on the professional side, but also importantly, personally, I grew a lot.
Thank you. And so we've heard, Monet, about the diversity of the class, the things that both Felipe and Manali learned about through their interactions with friends, through the classes, through the tracks, of course. But from your perspective, what makes an LBS student? So what separates out the applicants who really thrive versus those who simply have impressive resumes, which I'm sure so many, I mean, everybody does, right? Who
Yeah.
who ultimately goes on that program.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what separates us, I mean, in that question that I guess you're saying in terms of kind of like who we admit to the class, how we build the class and curate a class that actually reflects the world and gives students the opportunity to learn how to talk to and communicate and build relationships with and address situations with people from all different cultures, backgrounds. So um, for us, and a lot of business schools say, you know, we look at everything holistically and we look at the person as a whole. We have a very, compared to some schools, we have quite a small admissions team. And so we take a very personalized approach from my team, who's the recruitment team. So we call ourselves recruitment, but really we're your first point of contact with the school that you'll probably ever have. And so we get to know you from that point, your background, what you want to achieve, you know, what you're trying to do. And then you move through the team into once you've applied, into the admissions team, who also give that personal touch and really want to know who you are. And then if you make it to interview stage, you're then interviewed by an alumni. So you're not interviewed by one of the staff members, you're interviewed by someone who's been in our community for quite a while and understands how that ecosystem works. And so we build a really strong picture of who you are as a person, what you're going to offer to the class, what you're going to learn from the class, but also what your peers are going to learn from you. And so the students who thrive are the ones that come with that open-mindedness, who understand that they're going to feel probably uncomfortable for the first few weeks and months of their time in London, and are okay with that and are okay with feeling that way. And the students that, there's two kind of lanes of students, and the students that know exactly what they want, and then the students that want to use this as a chance to grow and change. And I think what ends up happening is everyone ends up doing the same thing, which is growing, changing, and adapting. And so it really works the best for those students who have that drive, but that agility and that open-mindedness about who they're going to be learning with, where they're going to be learning, how they're going to learn, and what that outcome is going to be for them. I think, yeah, open-mindedness, welcoming, global mindset, all of these sorts of things that support a strong applicant into the LBS community, because it's important for us to keep that ecosystem strong, and that value system on campus really strong as well, so that everyone feels welcome.
Definitely. So I will tie up my questions here, but we do have a few questions in the Q&A that I want to make sure we get to. So I'm going to send these in the direction they most make sense. So first off, we have one about running an existing foreign business. So how easily can you continue to run a business overseas during the MBA? And does anyone have real examples for friends? Anyone in your network who did something similar? I don't know if Manali or Felipe, if you ran across any friends who were doing this. Manali, you're nodding, so
Yeah. I think you can't like pursue an opportunity that you've been doing before. I don't know, there's some visa restrictions alongside that, but I think you can start a startup by yourself in the MBA. And there are several resources for that. So there's something called the Entrepreneurship Lab, Entrepreneurship Summer School, where if you have an idea, you can test it out by skipping the standard internship over the summer between both of your years, and test out that idea with the IEPC, which is Institute of Private Capital and Entrepreneurship in London Business School. There's the Entrepreneurship Club. So as I mentioned, I was part of that in my first year, where there's several different opportunities in terms of pitch competitions, getting just funding grants, for example, getting access to mentors, conferences, and different sort of industry experts. And then I know some of my closest friends have started their own startup in the MBA. So that has been incredible as well. And I know that the program also gives them a lot of resources. The faculty, for example, is always willing to get on calls with them and help out as much as they can. So there have been, of course, precedents of people starting their own business opportunities.
yeah. Felipe, any other thoughts on this one?
I mean, I think the first 6 months is very busy. They're very busy, like academically, socially, career-wise, everything. So it's probably hard to run a business in the first 6 months. But again, because of the flexibility, you can do what you want, right? So provided that you go to class and so on. So I would say yes, it's possible, but just be conscious on what are your choices and what are your objectives. And also, I have no idea, but there might be some visa implications. So be sure to check that, the student visa versus working abroad. So yeah.
Yeah,
I
if
will
you don't
say,
need to. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, now
Yeah.
I will say from a school perspective, what we kind of recommend is that students don't work for the first year. So because of the way that the courses are set up, and that it is very intense, as not just academically, but also socially, and you trying to figure out where you want to go. But that second year is really kind of there for the taking in terms of how you want to shape it. So obviously we can't control and predict what students want to do. But the main piece of advice is we wouldn't recommend you work at least for that kind of first 2 terms, 2.5 terms, because it wouldn't be the best option for you in terms of managing everything.
I was about to say, I think a vampire would be ideal here. If you don't need to sleep at all at night, you can really be super productive and run a business and do the degree. So, one more for Felipe and Manali. Given that you both were international students in London, how did you find the LBS support in terms of employability? I mean, obviously, Felipe, you wound up going back home, but kind of getting that first work opportunity. It sounds like each of you were quite involved in the networking and internship side. Manali, would you like to take that one first?
For sure. I think LBS as a school gives a lot of resources for helping in a professional on the professional side. So, for example, there are career coaches that you're tagged to, so you can set up time with them anytime that you want, unlimited number of calls with them, really charting out like the strategy for where you want to be in during the MBA and post your MBA. Then the job boards are very updated. So I think there are like I would say tens or 20 like different job opportunities posted every day on the job board. So if you just keep like regularly refreshing, you can apply for several different opportunities. And those are not just in London, those are around the world. So you get access to that really job pool as well. There are sector advisors as well, which I personally found very helpful. There are a few sector experts that when I had conversations with, were very, very helpful overall. Faculty has been, again, a strength in terms of also just connecting with their network or just kind of giving you guidance in terms of where you want to be. And then lastly, I think just zooming out of just the MBA, just LBS, I think going outside in London, there are so many different professional opportunities. I think, and as virtually as a student, you get like a volunteer badge to practically every conference, like be it the London Tech Week or some of like the Blue Earth Summit, which is UK's largest climate summit. And then you can of course meet people. Just like a small story, I met like someone at a climate conference in London outside of LBS, just completely by myself. I ended up there. I was volunteering for them, and he turned out to be an executive MBA from LBS, and now he was running a venture capital fund. So he was like, "Why don't you reach out to me?" So that turned out to be another sort of opportunity, and that's how I feel LBS people are always keen on meeting other alumni and other peers as well. So I think overall, just LBS it's in itself, but also London as a city gives so many opportunities. And then there's always going beyond London, so looking at Europe and different areas as well. But there's just multitude of resources that you can tap into.
Mm. Felipe, any thoughts on this one?
No, I think Manali covered it all. I think if my only note here is, if your dream job is to work in the US and you are not a US citizen, it's harder. But being in London, you can it's the place to be if you want to work in the UK, in Europe, or even in the Middle East, for sure. So just think about the geography where you want to work. And if it's the UK, LBS to me is the obvious choice.
Mm. And we have one more question specifically about the Laidlaw scholarship process, which we're a minute over time. But Manali, are you able to very, very quickly just answer this one, sort of the round you applied in, and what Laidlaw looks for in candidates at LBS?
Yeah. So during my time, so I applied in 2024, round two. I think there was after I got shortlisted or after I got my acceptance letter from LBS, that's when I got another application for scholarship for the Laidlaw Foundation. So that was my process, I think, back in the day, 2 years back. They might have changed it now. So I think I wouldn't say this is source of truth, but maybe it's best to check. But like potentially what they look at is it's kind of a mix between need and merit. So they do look at previous experience of working in leadership roles, but also being a champion for women's empowerment throughout. That's always been core of their thesis before and beyond in terms of what you do. So impact and like women empowerment would definitely be some of the core kind of values that they may look at. But there are several others in terms of academic excellence, your GRE, GMAT scores, as well as the essays that you write, not just for LBS, but also for the scholarship. But you can go on their website and get more information.
Great. Thanks for that brief overview. Very finally, Monet, if someone is interested in learning more, what's the best way to connect with the admissions team?
Great question. So for the MBA, would be to email mba@london.edu. And if you have any questions, that's sort of the first port of call. And you can book consultations with the team to talk through your background and how that looks in terms of applying for LBS and your post MBA goals. You can also look on our website at our upcoming events. We are traveling a lot over the summer. We will be in the US for the next couple of months. We will also be in LATAM next week. We will be in Japan and Korea in September. So we have a lot of travel coming up. So do have a look on our website and if you are dotted somewhere around the world, you might be able to connect with us in person when we're on our travels. So please do have a look.
Great. So lots of options there. Well, thank you so much to the three of you, Manali, Felipe, Monet. It's been great talking. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This is the session on LBS, and it'll be up on Poets and Quants website and various platforms too in a month or so from now. So keep an eye on that if you'd like to rewatch. Thanks very much.